This is section 7 from the presentation, Postmortem America and the Empire of the Herd. Section 7, the American plastics industry. Quote, intellectuals are more vulnerable to propaganda because they receive more information secondhand, and they feel pressure to have an opinion on every issue. This is a paraphrase of Jacques Ellul's introduction to his book, Propaganda, the Formation of Men's Minds. I would also add that in recent years, intellectuals, including scholars, professors, and such like, suffer from please love me nihilism and Tellosian weakness to a greater degree. So they are more willing to corrupt the truth to satisfy and pander to those in their vicinity and proximity to be admired, respected, and accepted by the rest of the herd. Big Joe Turner, got to lower him a little. Everyone appreciates your honesty until you're honest with them. Then you're an asshole. Quote unquote, George Carlin. Inauthenticity of self is the primary mode of being and mode of presentation of being of postmodern Americans. Quote, authenticity stands alone. It is the way things are. An authentic being is its own measure because it does not have to justify its existence by comparing it with anything else. Indeed, how would it be possible for people to step outside of their own lives to do this? Unquote. This is from Roderick Munday speaking on Heidegger's Sein und Zeit. What it means to be honest, the notion of philosophical honesty. My notion of philosophical honesty. Philosophical honesty is the highest, truest level of honesty attainable. Yes, there are levels of honesty and levels of dishonesty. Okay? So, like, there's one level of honesty is to lie to your girlfriend or your wife about whether she looks fat in those jeans or not. Okay? So that's a level of dishonesty. A greater level of dishonesty is to lie to your girlfriend or your wife about where you spent last night, saying that you got drunk and slept the night on a park bench when you really went to spend the night with your paramour. A higher level of dishonesty would be if you tell her that everything's okay, that you love her and you want to stay with her while you're clearing out both bank accounts and signing over all your property into your name so you can leave her and take everything. Okay, so there are levels of honesty and therefore levels of dishonesty. Philosophical honesty occurs as a result of many years of asymptotic strivings toward perfect self-knowledge. Perfect self-knowledge is attainable at all by the individuals developing their ability at primary process scuba diving, what I call primary process scuba diving. Therefore, honesty requires talents for psychological self-searching, self-discovery, but also, most importantly, at philosophical imagination, which Schopenhauer hypothesizes the eidetic ability to imagine or see ghosts where people stand, or to interchange images from the outside world in one's mind. That's like Schopenhauer said that philosophers are born and not made, and they're very rare. And he said the way you can tell a philosopher is that a philosopher has an eidetic talent in his head for looking at something in the physical external world, but picturing it as something else. For example, in those old cartoons from the 30s or 40s, when they're marooned on an island and they're getting hungry, and there's a fat guy and a skinny guy, and the fat guy looks at the tall skinny guy, and he pictures a hot dog and licks his lips thinking, oh, well, you know, maybe I should eat him because I'm getting really hungry. It's funny to compare somebody like Schopenhauer, who's one of the probably top 10 intellectual gods in human history, and compare it to some silly cartoon. But it's a hard kind of concept for people to comprehend, especially if they don't have any imagination, which most people today, members of the herds, it's something that's fading away as their intestinal fortitude fades away, their ability to believe fades away, and their ability to imagine fades away. These all required energy, and the American herd are people who are organically devolving energy out of themselves. I mean, the Eloi were energyless. They just sat around and ate and fucked and slept, while the Morlocks fed them, clothed them, sheltered them until they were mature enough to eat. Therefore, the average person is not capable of true honesty at the philosophical level in any way, shape, or form. The advent and evolution of the Eloi. Proponents of Eloi evolution. The more herd-like and overpopulated this society becomes, the fewer rights the individual can plan to maintain against the proponents of Eloi evolution. It's all going to disappear. If you people out there, if you're allowed to continue, that's where the human race is going to end up. Government micromanagement of people's day-to-day lives. The larger the herd gets, the fewer rights and freedoms for the individual. It's not just the size of the herd, but the more integrated, the stronger. Today's Eloi are not able to fight a revolutionary war of any kind, or any kind of war for the sake of freedom or for any sake. These people are confused about what the meaning of this country is to begin with. Creeping Quakerism. Self-defense and gun control nonsense demonstrate creeping Quakerism. Decadent nihilists, no longer capable of doing what's necessary to protect and defend themselves. The story of the wise king. Once there was this king, and he ruled over his kingdom. Right in the middle of the kingdom, there was a well. That's where everybody drank. One night, this witch came along and she poisoned the well. And the next day, everybody drank from it except the king, and they all went crazy. They got together in the street and they said, we got to get rid of the king because the king is mad. And then that night, he went down and he drank from the well. And the next day, all the people rejoiced because the king had regained his reason. Mendacity is the religion of the American people. America has achieved a Disneyland culture wherein there is no longer any truth and everything is a lie. Mauvais foi America. We've created a society where bad faith, disingenuity, inauthenticity, insincerity, and mendacity of the lowest order are the rule and the norm in the psyches of our people, expected and accepted. In fact, sincerity is looked down upon and ridiculed, although this is not the official position. For example, the end of Princeton professor Harry Frankfurt's sincerity itself is bullshit, at the end of his essay on bullshit. Postmortem Americans are the most dishonest and propagandizable populace in human history. The media are virtually in control of the American mind and its opinions. The media includes journalistic media, but also television, magazines, Hollywood garbage movies, and on and on. Somebody is obviously in control of the media, because dozens of formats and channels are squawking the exact same message over and over in obvious application of the big lie tactic. Journalism is dishonest by its very nature. Think about it. What's the first thing they teach you in journalism school? The definition of what is news. Dog bites man is not news. That happens all the time. Man bites dog is news. Man bites dog, that's news. So the news reporting and journalism are by their very nature sensationalist and hystericist. Or is it maybe conversely that the people as a herd demand sensation and hysteria, and if they don't get it, they'll watch, and somebody else will produce sensation, will produce prefabricated, manufactured sensation and hysteria, and that's what they'll watch. And the other people won't get advertisers, and they'll go out of business. People want to be excited and enthralled, not educated or informed. If news sources reported the facts, Americans wouldn't be interested or pay attention. News is mostly entertainment in America. The unexamined life is not worth living. People who do not examine their lives are morally inferior. It is morally justified to kill or at least enslave people who do not examine their lives. The American people as a whole are what I call NQT, not qualified to think. Smith, Bruner, and White, Opinions and Personality. Smith, Brenner, and White did the research and published their book, Opinions and Personality, in the 50s and 60s. Opinions and Personality is one of the most important social scientific texts ever published, in my opinion. One of the foundational documents for the new field of political psychology. Functional hypothesis. We hold on to this is the functional hypothesis of Smith, Bruner, and White's research in their book, Opinions of Personality. Functional hypothesis. We hold on to an attitude as long as it serves a psychological function for us. And according to Smith, Bruner, and White, attitudes serve 4 primary functions. They are object appraisal, social adjustment, externalization, and value expression. Object appraisal is the use, they define as the use of healthy reality testing to understand the world around us. 2, social adjustment is to gain, the function of social adjustment is to gain group approval and acceptance. 3, externalization is an ego defensive function to help deal with inner psychological problems and conflicts and to protect ourselves from disturbing self-knowledge. Value expression helps us in the expression of our own self-concept. Now, according to Smith, Bruner, and White, number 1 and number 4, the function, primary function number 1, object appraisal, and primary function number 4, value expression, help us in the expression of our own self-concept. 1 and 4 serve healthy non-pathological attitude functions. Number 2 and number 3, social adjustment and externalization, serve unhealthy pathological attitude functions. 90% or more of contemporary Americans possess attitudes functions that serve either a social adjustment or externalization function, according to their study. And then I think it's even greater percentage than that. In other words, the attitudes of most Americans on most public issues function to serve unhealthy psychological functioning. Smith, Bruner, and White. Politics in this country has become personal. When I say personal, what I mean is that it has become psychologically oriented, because political, moral, and religious positions and views no longer serve political, moral, or religious functions. They are defense mechanisms for hiding mental conflicts from consciousness. The Bennington College study of Theodore Newcomb in the 30s